How's it going, fam? Welcome back to Erica's EDC, and today we're doing a triple review of CRUWEAR steel and 3 different models that I have in this steel. I haven't done a review on any of these models, so I'm very excited to do the review on the steel and these really cool blades. I figured I'd put them all in the same video because they're all the same steel. So, we are reviewing the Northern Knifeworks Badger in CRUWEAR, the Primitive Bear Knives Edisto Gen 2 in CRUWEAR, and the Duckhead Forge Chum in CRUWEAR. So, I've been using all of these knives for about a month. I have been carrying all of them and using them for everything under the sun that you can think of. As you guys know, I feed my dogs a raw food diet. I wouldn't say I'm in the countryside in New Hampshire, but we're definitely like not in the city. I use my knives a lot. I do leather work. I take care of the house. You just use a knife a lot on a daily basis. So I've been able to really put these through the paces, see where their highlights are, their downfalls if they have any. I have sharpened all of them, and I think that's so important when you review a knife. I don't think you can do a review unless you've sharpened the knife, because that literally can change everything. And we've talked about that a lot on the channel before, how if an edge isn't working for you, you can change it, you can lay it back, you can make it more obtuse, you can give it a toothier edge or a finer edge. Like, it's very difficult to review a cutting tool when you've never utilized the cutting part of it, and you can't utilize the cutting part unless you've done the sharpening, in my opinion. So, all of these have been sharpened. They're all at different BTEs, DPS, and HRC. So, let's go over that because all of that is very important in the performance of a knife. The Northern Knifeworks Badger. This is 9 thou behind the edge. That's what BTE stands for. So the behind the edge thickness is 9 thousandths. And this is 66.5 HRC. The production ones we ran 64. Mine turned out pretty spicy. It is what it is. The harder the better for me. So mine was 66.5, but the production ones are 64. Either way, we have a really thin and slicey knife here. Then we go to the Edisto Gen 2. This is CRUWEAR at 63 to 64. But this one is 30 thou BTE. So we've got a thicker blade stock, full flat grind, and it's pretty thick behind the edge. 30 thou is pretty dang thick. I think the thickest knife I have is 33 thou BTE, and it's an ESSI. But 30 thou is pretty dang thick. And then the Chum here is only 8 thou in most areas. I think I got 10 on some other parts, but it's basically 8 thou BTE on this one. We've got 62 HRC, 63 to 64, and 66.5. So an array of geometries, thicknesses, and hardnesses, all of the same steel. I believe they're all done, no, this one's cryo, I'm pretty sure this one is, and I'm not sure. I have talked with Alan, and I think it's trickier for him to get cryo tanks where he is, so I'm figuring he did, but I'm not sure. Alan, if you're watching this, let us know what you did. So, how did they all perform? Well, first of all, CRUWEAR is one of my favorite steels. I consider it a super steel. I think it's becoming a little more mainstream, but it's very much up there in performance for me with K390, Rex 45, MagnaCut, 10V, all of those kind of like really super steels. CRUWEAR does very well. It is not stainless, but it's also not as prone to staining and rusting as something like K390 or like especially 1095, ADCRV2. It's more resistant to those things than some of the other steels. There is a steel called Z-Wear, which is essentially the stainless version of CRUWEAR, but CRUWEAR will take staining over time, as you can see here. It is not completely stainless, but it definitely is more stain resistant than some other steels. I think we've got some staining on this one too, a little bit. But I have noticed that with the higher HRC you go, the more difficult it is to give it a patina. So just a heads up, like I said, this is 66.5 HRC, and it was very difficult to get this to even stain this much. And then the Chum was sent in with a forced patina, so we really don't know what would have happened otherwise, but it's got a forced one. So, let's start off with some differences that I noticed between the HRCs, because I think that's really interesting. The lowest we have here is 62. However, it is the thinnest knife as well. I noticed that this has kept an insane edge. Do I think that's in part due to the thin geometry and thin BTE? Yes. Is 62 low for CRUWEAR? Absolutely not. It's not low, but it's lower than these ones. I like that this was run at 62 though, because this is an outdoors hunting knife. This is supposed to be kind of like a hunting camp knife. So I'm glad that Dusty is running these at 62, because it will be more forgiving with this thin geometry, having it at 62, in case you, baton and you hit some rock or some, soil with pebbles in it, or if you're processing game and you hit bone. Also, when you're processing game, the hide of the animal, the fur is typically not like clean. These animals are living out in the woods, so generally when you're processing them, they can have like dirt and debris stuck in their fur, and when you're field dressing game, you are cutting through all of that. You're not going to wash a deer before you field dress it in the woods. So when you're processing game out in the field, you're definitely hitting some very abrasive materials when you're doing that. I think that 62 was perfect for this design. I think with the thin geometry, it allows the knife to stay sharp for an insane amount of time, but you do have that forgiveness within the heat treat in case you do come into contact with some high impact tasks. The Edisto at 63-64 also makes a lot of sense to me, because this is 30 thou BTE. So generally the rule of thumb for the most part is like, if you run a thinner geometry, you generally, if you're going to be doing like impact tests or tasks, if you're running a thin geometry, you don't always want to bring it up to like 68 HRC, because if you're doing something where the edge could chip, you want to play around with geometry and heat treat, right? So if you have a really thin knife that may be coming in contact with impact testing, you may want to drop the hardness a little bit. That way the hardness is the forgiveness part, okay? If we look at the opposite, where you have the BTE in your favor and it's 30 thou, very, very thick, that gives you on the hardness level the forgiveness to bring it up a little bit, right? Because we have geometry being our buffer for the impact tasks. Does that make sense? This is so thick that if you were to baton with it, which I've done a ton, or hit bone or rock or anything abrasive, your geometry should be backing up it's basically the tent stakes for that, right? So with this knife, because it's so thick, that hardness can be 63 or 64, because geometry is our support system in this. So these are two completely opposite knives, right? We've got one that's very thick and a little bit harder, and we have one that's very thin and a little bit softer. And you can choose which one you want to do, and then there's always an in-between, but that's kind of the rule of thumb, right? Now with the Badger, this is kind of an interesting like one-off, right? So we have a thin BTE of like 9 thou, but it's 66.5 HRC. I didn't have a single issue with this knife whatsoever. And I did baton with it. All of this is recorded, of course. You can go back and watch the knife testing playlist, but we have processed a lot of cardboard. We've hit staples. We have batoned with it. We've done all of the things with it. I think maybe we had one little like nick at one point, but this didn't really have any issues. I do think if I literally took this and purposely whacked it into a rock pretty hard or dropped it on a hard surface like concrete, I would imagine that this would probably chip because it is thin and also hard. The reason that this is the way it is because it is an EDC knife, and also it could be a hunting knife for sure and a backpacking knife, but the idea behind the Badger was to be an ultra light, ultra thin and slicey knife for backpacking for the most part. And I'm imagining more food prep tasks, maybe cutting paracord, helping to set up a campsite, but also a lot of like EDC stuff. So this one, like I said, if you were to drop this on the concrete or hit a rock pretty hard with it, I would figure that maybe it could result in some chipping. But you can pick and choose kind of what you're going to do with your knife and choose a hardness and a geometry based off of what you think your tasks will be. The good thing about CRUWEAR is it's a very in the middle of the road steel, in my opinion, as in it kind of covers every demographic. It does everything pretty darn well, in my opinion. Obviously, there are things that it like is less good at, like it's not completely stainless. So if you were to take this knife and put it in a sheath with blood all over it and then leave it there for a week, it is going to rust. So that's one of its kind of like downfalls, I guess you could say, is that it's not completely stainless, but it is pretty stain resistant. So all of these knives did incredibly well. I did tasks with them that they were kind of made for, and also tasks that they were maybe not made for. So the Edisto is a little more of an outdoors knife. Alan makes a lot of knives for people that live in the country, people that camp a lot, people that are outdoors doing outdoorsy things, right? This is not a thin and slicey EDC knife to open Amazon packages all day, right? Like, will it do it? Yes. But what is this actually made for? This is made for an all-around utility knife. It's a ranch knife. It's a game processing knife. It's great for feather sticking. It's great for camp tasks. And I've done all of those with this. Like I said, please check out the testing footage on all of these blades. But this is definitely more of a knife that you would EDC if you were outside a lot, I guess. Because it's super thick, this is not the best cardboard processor, okay? You've got a lot of beef behind that edge and a very thick blade stock, so this is not going to go through cardboard with ease for a very long period of time. But what it will do is baton very well, cross baton. It will spark a fire rod, a ferrocerium rod. It's very easy to sharpen. It is easy to strop. It's kind of just an all-around utility knife. The Badger, like I said, a little more geared toward EDC. So this was processing cardboard for a way longer period of time without needing to be touched up. You've got a thinner geometry. You've got that higher hardness. This does have a very sharp spine, so it does also strike a ferro rod. But this is, much smaller. This is about 7 inches. This one's about 8 and a little over 8. So this is a little more of like an EDC knife. Like I said, depending on the steel and the geometry and everything, this could very much be a hunting knife, and that's kind of what I wanted with this design, was also to give it a good amount of belly so that if you want to hunt with it, you can. I would, the CRUWEAR 64 would be fine for hunting. And that's what the production ones are, but you can also do like K390 or whatever. But this has a good amount of belly, so you can definitely use it for hunting. You can totally use it for food prep, on your camp trips, all that good stuff. But this did these slicey tasks very, very well. And then the Chum, this is an insane slicer. Look at how much room you have to thin that edge out, right? So this is very thin behind the edge, very slicey, even though it does have a little bit of a thicker stock. Insane slicer. This is not something that you're going to be EDCing though. Like, this isn't something that you're going to put on your belt and process cardboard with day to day, right? It's way too long and big for that. It goes on your belt. It's just too much. But I have an 8670 version of this that I process deer with. It did so incredibly well. That's what it was kind of made for, was field tasks. Sharpened spine, so you can do the Ferricium rod, of course. Easy to strap back because it's thin behind the edge, and 62 HRC. Just this one, this was so fun to play with out in the field. This was a blast to make little bonfires with. I love these scallops that Dusty did, and those were actually initially a mistake, and he told me that, and I was like, well, number one, they look really cool. Number two, let me see if they're actually useful, and if they are, maybe you should just keep it, like maybe it was meant to be. So when I was processing the deer, I purposely made myself hold it like this and do a whole bunch of different, you know, ways to hold it basically in my hand. And these are actually surprisingly comfortable. Sorry if I seem distracted. It is so cold outside here in New Hampshire today. My little fingies are freezing. It's like very dark and dreary, and I almost look sick in this lighting. But anyway, yeah, it's just crazy cold. So this one did the game processing very well. I processed the dog food with it. I did the batoning and the cross batoning and the feather sticks and all of the things with it, and it did so well. I'm trying to think of anything that these knives did not do super well, and it's getting harder and harder to find cons in my reviews because I'm reviewing knives that were very well thought out and very well executed with time put into them and time put into testing the prototypes. So it's getting way harder to find things that I don't like about the knives because I do what they were meant to do and they do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a little tricky. Like I said, the only thing that I can think of is that this one doesn't process cardboard for very long just because it's pretty thick behind the edge, but that is not what it's meant for. Allen doesn't make knives to be pocket jewelry and do play pretend with. They're actually hard use, I guess I would say, knives. Very hard use knives. So I can't really think of any cons. The steel on all of these did incredibly well. I did not notice a great difference between the 62 HRC CRUWEAR and the 66.5 HRC CRUWEAR. They were all very easy to sharpen. Burrs came up nice. They came off very gently and very efficiently. It took a matter of minutes to bring them from dull to hair-popping sharp. I will try to record more sharpening progressions with the knives when I'm doing that. It just I don't always have time to turn on the camera and do it, but all of them got edges. They were all so easy to sharpen. I'm trying to think, man. I can't really think of any cons. People do ask often if the rock texturing is comfortable. I find it to be. I think it really depends on the maker and how they execute their rock pattern, but a lot of Allen's knives are done with this texturing and it's very comfortable. I think the way that he does the little dips in there, they're aggressive enough where it's grippy, but it's not gonna create hot spots, especially with just kind of the overall design of the knife. It's very simple, right? There's nothing to really create a hot spot. This one you lock right in with that index finger choil right there. This one is so comfortable. This is kind of like a modified Coke bottle handle. Yeah, I can't really think of any cons, guys. I mean, they all did incredible. The CRUWEAR is just out of this world. I actually am really enjoying CRUWEAR for outdoor tasks and like the food processing for the dogs. It's very good at holding an edge through abrasive tasks. I process a lot of like birds for the dogs, bones, organs, muscle meat, and it just goes, guys. You don't have to strop it up after. It's still hair popping sharp. Yeah, I can't really think of any cons. So if you're looking for a game processing and outdoors knife that is very lightweight, I should mention, very, very lightweight. the Chum is an awesome option. If you're looking for something way more hard use, kind of like sharpened pry bar, but like a good version of a sharpened pry bar, the Primitive Bear Knives Edisto Gen 2, great option. And if you're looking for an ultralight, smaller, backpacking EDC knife, the Badger from Northern Knifeworks is a really nice option. Tons of belly. These have been modified a little bit. They're more fancy looking now, I guess you should say. This is kind of a prototype. They now have like a swedge, and they're just a little fancier looking, but they're all fantastic options. I didn't have any handle separation. Man, every time I try to film, that happens. I did not experience any handle separation, and I did a lot of batoning with all three of these. You can probably even see where I used to strike a ferro rod with that. I think you can see it on every blade, probably. So they've definitely been used and abused. I had no handle separation. I have heard that's a thing that can happen with the impact of the baton hitting the knife. No separation, no cracking, no nothing on any of these. Yeah, I have no complaints, guys. These were all really incredible to use and carry. And CRUWEAR is just an all-around fabulous steel. I highly recommend it. I really do. It's one of the best steels I've ever used. And like I said, there's a saying, you're always going to compromise with something when it comes to steel. And I do believe that, but I think CRUWEAR is one of the steels that is really not compromising too much in the grand scheme of things. It's just wonderful. Very easy to touch up, and you don't need diamonds per se. I think it responds better to diamonds, but if you only have like Japanese water stones or ceramic stones or oil stones, you can still touch up CRUWEAR. It may just take a little bit longer. I do recommend diamonds for it, especially if it's above 62 HRC, but it's not a full-blown necessity, okay? Same with touching it up on a strop. You don't need CBN or diamond emulsion. You can use the aluminum oxide crayon stuff. Like I said, it may just take a little bit longer. It may not come up to as keen of an edge, but it's not unobtainable, if that makes any sense. There are some steels where just, unless you have diamonds or CBN, nothing else will touch it. And this is not one of those steels. You can kind of go old school to keep it maintained, I guess I should say. Trying to think if there's anything else. I will obviously link these makers down in the description below. Thanks to all of the makers. These are just beautiful knives. I'm just really lucky that I got to test all these. This is a design that I did with Levi. This is a design that I did with Dusty, and the Edisto, I had no part in any of it. I just think Alan's a great maker. I also do believe he's doing a sale for Thanksgiving where if you use the code THANKFUL, I believe, you get a discount on your knife. I don't think anyone else is doing that other than Alan, but yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions. I really hope that you enjoyed this. These knives were a blast to test and use. As always, go use your shit. Learn how to sharpen your knives. I'll see you guys on the next video. I love you so much, fam. Take care and happy Thanksgiving.